You got the raise. Maybe it was 6%, maybe 10, maybe a flat dollar amount that sounded genuinely exciting when your manager said it out loud in that meeting. And for a few days, maybe a week, you felt it, that small exhale of finally, like the work you'd been putting in had been acknowledged and now things were going to be different. And then, somehow, 3 months later, you're living exactly the same financial life you were living before the raise. Not worse, but not better either. The money came in, the lifestyle quietly adjusted, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be financially stayed exactly the same. You earned more, you have nothing extra to show for it. That pattern, and I say this as someone who spent years watching it happen and eventually had to confront it in my own life, is one of the most quietly devastating financial cycles there is. My name is Threk, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, behavioral psychology, and why income increases so rarely translate into actual wealth accumulation for people who deserve so much better than that outcome. Today, we're covering two things that belong together but almost never get discussed in the same conversation: how to actually negotiate a raise effectively, and what to do with that raise the moment it lands so that lifestyle creep never gets the chance to absorb it. Because here's the thing, most raise advice stops at getting the money, and most anti-lifestyle creep advice assumes you already have money to protect. This video connects both sides, and by the end of it, you'll have a complete picture, from the conversation with your manager to the automated system that makes sure the raise actually changes your financial trajectory. Let's start with the negotiation itself, because most people approach this conversation in a way that quietly undermines them before they've said a single number. The most common mistake is framing the raise request around personal need. I need more money because my rent went up, or I've been here 3 years and feel like I deserve more. And look, those things might be completely true and completely valid, but they're the wrong argument in a professional context, because a manager's job isn't to solve your personal financial situation, it's to allocate budget in ways that serve the organization. The moment you frame your ask around personal need, you've shifted the negotiation onto grounds where your manager has no real reason to say yes. The frame that works is contribution and market value. Before you walk into that conversation, you need two things prepared. First, a specific, quantified record of your contributions: projects delivered, problems solved, revenue influenced, costs reduced, whatever is measurable in your specific role. Not, I work hard and I'm reliable. Actual outcomes, numbers where possible. The more concrete your contribution record, the stronger your position, because you're essentially presenting a business case rather than making a personal request. Second, you need market data. What are comparable roles in your industry and region actually paying right now? This isn't about threatening to leave, it's about anchoring the conversation to objective reality rather than internal perception. When you can say, based on my research, the market range for this role with my experience is X to Y, and I'd like to discuss getting my compensation aligned with that, you've moved the conversation from emotional to factual, and factual conversations go better. One more thing on timing, which I think is genuinely underappreciated. The best time to ask for a raise is right after a visible win, a project that landed well, a problem you visibly solved, a moment when your value has just been demonstrated in a way your manager can still see clearly. Not during a stressful period for the company, not right after a difficult quarter. Timing is a variable within your control, and most people don't use it strategically. Now, you've had the conversation and the raise is coming. This is the moment where most people's financial progress quietly disappears, not through bad decisions, but through the absence of a deliberate one. Lifestyle creep doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, "Hey, I'm here to absorb your raise." It just happens through 100 small, individually reasonable adjustments. The slightly nicer apartment that's now affordable, the dinners out that become more frequent, the subscription services that accumulate, the upgraded version of things you already had. None of these feel irresponsible. Each one makes sense in isolation, but collectively they ensure that your new income level establishes a new baseline, and the gap between income and wealth stays the same. You earned more, you have nothing extra to show for it. The mechanism that prevents this is what I call a raise split, and you need to set it up before the first paycheck at the new rate arrives. Here's the basic structure. When the raise lands, decide immediately, before you've experienced the new income, before your lifestyle has a chance to calibrate to it, what percentage goes directly to wealth building and what percentage improves your quality of life. A 50-50 split is a reasonable starting point. Half the raise goes to an investment account, an emergency fund top-up, or extra debt payments. Half goes to lifestyle, meaning you do get to enjoy the raise, which matters for sustainability, but you enjoy it exactly half of it rather than all of it. The key is doing this before the money lands in your checking account and disappears into adjusted spending patterns. Automate the wealth building portion immediately. Set up the automatic transfer before the new paycheck arrives, because if you wait after, your brain will have already adapted to the new income level as normal, and the transfer will feel like a reduction rather than a portion you'd already earmarked. The psychological difference between "I'm saving money I'm used to spending" and "I'm saving money I'm used to spending" is enormous, and automation collapses that difference entirely by removing the moment of choice from the equation. There's a deeper principle here that I think is worth naming directly, which is that lifestyle creep is essentially a failure of intention rather than a failure of discipline. Most people don't decide to let their raise disappear into lifestyle. They just don't decide anything. They let the money arrive and respond to it naturally, which means spending it naturally. The raise split forces a decision at the right moment. It's not about being frugal or denying yourself good things. It's about being intentional before the default behavior takes over. And here's the honest, slightly frustrating truth about this entire topic. The raise negotiation and the lifestyle creep prevention are both fundamentally about the same skill, which is having a clear, articulate, evidence-based conversation, one with your manager about your value and one with yourself about your priorities. Both conversations are uncomfortable to prepare for, both feel easier to postpone, and both, when actually done, produce results that compound forward in a way that avoiding them never does. You got the raise because your work was worth it. Now, make sure the raise actually changes something, not just how your life looks for a few months, but where you actually end up in 10 years. The negotiation gets you to the starting line. The intention keeps you on the track. Set the split. Automate the transfer. Have the conversation. The version of yourself 5 years from now will feel the difference between having done this and letting the raise quietly disappear like every one before it. That difference is worth more than the raise itself.